retired in um, August of 1974, and I retired in '98. And I was a brakeman, a conductor, and a locomotive engineer. And I had all those years. And one of my favorite guys was Boothead, and I had a lot of fun working with Boothead.
Tell us your name and about when you hired and retired on the railroad.
Okay, I'm Larry Buckland, and when I got out of the service, they weren't hiring in this area, so I went to Columbus, Ohio, and hired out in February of 1968. And I've been retired for October 1st will be 20 years of retirement, and I've enjoyed that more than I did the work.
All right, tell us about your positions on the railroad. What jobs did you work?
Well, I hired out as a fireman, and I got promoted in about 3 years. I was promoted to engineer, and that's what I worked the rest of my time. And due to transferring from Ohio back to this area, I stayed on the extra list most of my career.
Well, can you tell us what your favorite part about working on the railroad was?
Well, probably the vacation and days off. I'm a third generation railroader. My grandfather was an engineer, my dad, 3 of my uncles, and a lot of my other family members were on the railroad. And it's just the family. So I guess I enjoy the family tradition more than any other.
What's your most treasured memory that you can recall during your time on the road?
All the memories of the different great people that I worked with, and their careers and their families and stuff. It's been a pleasure to work with the railroad people and the community. They're great people.
What's your name and about your years of service on the railroad, like when you hired and retired?
I'm Larry Compton. I was a train dispatcher in Bluefield from 1978 until 2003. And then I retired. Not really ready to, but I did. But I had 18 years on the first shift pokey position. It was good.
Like what jobs did you work?
Very few. I started out as on the extra board as a messenger and operator, and moved right in 6 months later to train dispatcher. And that's where I was for the rest of the time.
Can you tell us a little bit about your favorite memory?
To me, it was really a better job to work when it was Norfolk Southern, or Norfolk Western. But then when it went to Norfolk Southern, it was a whole different railroad. But the years, that I worked when it was Norfolk Western, I mean, you enjoyed going to work, the people you worked with, and, But after they switched to Norfolk Southern, it wasn't so good,
What was your favorite part about working on the railroad?
Knowing the people, working, learning different people, building relationships. Of course, as a train dispatcher, that being the stressful job it was, there's a whole lot, the dispatchers weren't very well liked most of the time. It was a good job.
Tell us your name and about your hiring and retiring times for the railroad.
Okay, my name's Joe Curry, and I hired on the railroad in 1967. I was going to say 65, but 67. And I worked out of Williamson all my life. That's the only place I ever worked out of. I was an engineer on the railroad. I was a brakeman starting out, and then I was in the first class that they made engineers out of, and they're all gone except 3 of us, and all 3 of us are here today, which is great.
That is great.
And I spent 35 and a half years out on the railroad, and I've been retired since 2002. So I've been retired a pretty good while and enjoyed it, and had a lot of memories out there on the railroad. A great bunch of guys to work with. You couldn't want no better people to work with. We got a great bunch of people to work with out there. And your dad, I was telling a story out there about your dad and how me and J.I. would meet in the call office, and I was telling him about a tale that we used to talk about over a set of jumper cables. And a guy, to make a long story short, he come over to my house, had a good set of jumper cables, and he said to me, help me start my wife's car. And I said, man, that's a good looking set of jumper cables you got there. He stuck about on his finger like that, and he said, $5. I reached and grabbed them. I told your daddy about that, and me and him, we've laughed over that every time we would meet in the call office. I never did work with your dad directly unless he was pushing me on the train or something like that. But me and him got to be great friends. And anyway, to go back to my story about, I had 35 and a half years on the railroad, and it's a hard life for a railroader. It really is. If you got a family, a lot of guys couldn't put up with that kind of work, but the ones that stayed with it and things like that, you know, they end up with a pretty good income and things like that, and just a lot of good friends, and just I'm glad that Jay has put this little thing together for the last couple of years, and it's really been a blessing to get to come and see some of the guys. You know, after a while, a lot of them don't look like you used to look. You know, most of us don't. You know, we're getting older. But like I said, I spent my whole career out of Williamson. When I went to other places, I would deadhead to other places and work when I was first starting on the railroad. And that's how I got to know a lot of guys, other than just meeting them in a call office and stuff like that. So that's basically all I can say about my railroad thing. You know, it's just a good career, and I enjoyed every minute of it. I worked out there. My wife didn't like it, but most women didn't like it. But it was really a good career for anybody who could stay with it. And it's hard, not physically hard labor and things like that, but you working 24/7 anytime they call you to work. You know how it was, and so it's just been a good life. It really has.
Just start by telling us your name and a little bit about your hiring and retiring times on the railroad.
My name's John McDonald. I hired in '75 in Detroit, and I retired medically in '98. Been retired ever since.
Okay, tell us a little bit about what positions that you served during your time.
I started out as a brakeman / conductor, and I worked that until the blizzard of '78. And I was on a train going from one point to another, and every time we got anywhere near a road crossing, the train would go into emergency, and I'd have to walk that train in that blizzard. It took hours. And when we finally made it to an intermediate point where they had another crew for us, I had made up my mind I was going to go into engine service. So 6 months later, I was in an engineer's class to become a locomotive engineer. Didn't have to walk those trains anymore.
Can you tell us a little bit about your most treasured memory while you were on the railroad?
My first day, I couldn't believe people were getting paid to do this. And I really enjoyed my career on the railroad. There's jobs, there's careers. The railroad's a lifestyle, and it was a lot like the military in it. I was a good fit.
What was your favorite part about being a railroader?
Moving the trains, getting a train from point A to point B without tearing it up. And in the mountains, that can be a feat. That would be the success in getting the train to destination without anything going wrong.
Rick Foligno, hired in 1977, quit in 2006. And I worked Valley, worked at Bulls Gate Jobs, Williamson Jobs, and worked at Willie Yard. I hired on at Willie Yard. I hired on as a brakeman and got promoted a year later as conductor. Then 10 years later, I went into engine service. That was engine service for 20 years.
What would you say is your favorite part of being a railroader?
Actually, I would say, go back to, I'd say braking. Was my, after being an engineer, I regretted going into engine service.
What was your favorite memory while you were out on the road?
I guess just working over at Jaeger, working with some of the guys that I like to work with. Had one particular conductor I liked to work with was Jim Adair. He was one of the best there was. Well, he was just a good person. He could. He's a person that actually could play music on the old caboose whistles.
Wow. But that was entertaining.
Yes, it was. He could play Yankee Doodle Dandy.
My name is Harry C. McLaughlin, and I hired in October of '66, and I quit in February of '99. I was a brakeman to start with 3 years. I was in the first brakeman they made engineer class. 3 of us are still living, 3 of them here today. I have my picture took with me. I'll soon be 85 years old. I ain't in too good a shape myself, but I got people to take care of me.
What is your most treasured memory that you can recall from your time on the railroad?
Mostly riding with the taxi drivers. Oh, you take them out to eat. We had all pretty girls drove us around everywhere. And I'd always take them out to eat. I was friends with about everybody. All the bosses liked me. I was the best setter they had on the railroad, so I would go out, you know. And back when I worked, they was busy. They'd bring your relief crew out to get you. And the other crew had a road cross block, something running selling the engine 15 hours. And I never did complain. I was making money sitting on my butt. Just have a little drive-in down Tazewell on the East End, John Boys, and the dispatchers all loved me. They put me through the side and I had me a log. I'd cross over the ditch to go beat that girl at work. John Boys, she said, you don't have to pay for mine, so I'm gonna eat with you, but you don't have to pay for mine. I had something as cheap as every day I could do. I love it.
Tom Jeffrey, I hired in July of '79, and I retired in February of '21. And I was a track man, worked on the section crew, and then when I finished up, I was on the rail gang. It ended up at counting the furloughs, I had 39 years. We always started out down in Welch, West Virginia, and Kimball, and then eventually ended up on the rail gang, and when I finished up, I was in Lynchburg, Virginia, on the rail gang. September the 6th, 1981, and it was, I'd never experienced anything like that before or since. We were out lining curves one day ahead of a cutoff special, and there was a head-on, sideswipe head-on at East End of Farm, and what we were supposed to be finished by noon, we ended up being down there till, about 7 o'clock the next day, and that was on a Saturday and a Sunday, and that thing was horrific, and I'd never seen so much equipment in such a small area, so tangled up, and we helped bring some people out of the wreckage, and the whole crew perished in that one. One of the stories they tell about that was an engineer named J.W. Reed, and he was in Portsmouth, Ohio, and he had finished his regular duties, his regular job, and anyhow, they'd run out of crews. It had been 5 or 6 hours before they get one rested to take 86, so they asked him if he would step up and take it. And then they told him he could they'd give him a taxi straight back. Well, he never made it. And he was set to retire the following week. So that's, some of these guys, I know one guy down in the Virginia division, he was set to retire, and then he got hurt. He decided he'd work another year, and now he just got back, and I tried to remind him that, he already had it made, but nothing doing. He's going out there to work another year. I just hope he don't end up like Mr. Reed. As you get older, you might get careless. And
then, you know, just that one moment, they said they missed the signal down there, what caused all that. But, you know, we don't know exactly what it was because there's nobody to question. We just know the results of it. It was pretty bad. Well, I guess it was the fact they paid well, and you know, it was good honest work. You know, I like to think it was a pursuit of a noble cause or a noble craft. Well, I like to think anyway.
Counts. Hired in April of 1972. Actually, 52 years ago at this time, I was in Norfolk, and we were putting in radar on the hump down there for the Cold Wars. I worked in Signal Communications. I worked in construction for about 2 years. I was all over from Norfolk to Chicago to Sandusky to went into the system via Columbus, and then I went into maintenance. I came to Bluefield in November 1973, went in maintenance, signal maintenance, and did it for, golly, I don't know. I worked all over the place, Williamson, Norton, just like train crews, we was all over the place, as a signal maintenance. And we were on call all the time, just like the train crews. And that's, everybody knew my name, but a lot of people didn't know who I was because I was out there all the railroad. But I was out there almost 36 years, and got hurt, had to leave. But I had a good career. But I must say the NW was a lot better than the Norfolk Southern. It was a whole different system.
Yeah,
I mean, it was just different. It was good. We were more like family then. But I, you know, almost 36 years. If I'd have stayed with that my whole career, I would have had 40 years. But I didn't make it. Had to retire early. That's okay. I'm the only one in my family's in the railroad. I just like being around it. It's just, it's a whole different industry. It's nothing like any other industry out there. You know, we were just family, and I enjoyed. You had to think. You know, you had a lot of critical thinking out there, especially what I did.
A lot of responsibility.
I had a lot of responsibility. Every time there's something go wrong, they blame us. You know, two trains or something, they blame on the signal department. You're guilty and still proves innocent. But it was challenging, but we had a lot of good times. A lot of bad, but mostly good. Some of the guys I trained under, they're all gone. I used to love to run a motor car, so they took those away. I used to use a motor car before we had trucks to run up down the track, troubleshoot on those, and they took those away. Actually, one of these motor cars sitting out here is when we ran. I recognize it. We've got two little terminals on where you stick a meter on. I'd read the track circuits going down the road, and I'd see when I passed the trouble. I could tell by my meter I done passed the trouble. The most memorable moment, I would say, it's not a memorable moment, it's a nightmare flood of 77 in Williamson. It was horrible. I mean, we lost everything. That's probably the most memorable.
A lot of work after that to get
Yeah, and the
everything.
second most memorable moment was when that dynamite truck blew up in Keystone.
What year was that?
79, I'm thinking 79, don't quote me exactly. But I was actually over on the tug for it, we were on the road crossing up there, flashers. I heard a blast of it. They called us to come over, and it blew our power lines down, caved the road in, and was trying to get people. It was pretty bad. And a special train just went by, I think. But that, you know, we were very fortunate. That's probably my most two memorable. There's so many nights I've spent out here camped out, snowstorms, heat. But it was a challenging career, but a rewarding career.
My name is Jerry Jude. The year I hired on was 1966,
What year did you retire?
2000.
So you did about 40 years of service.
Yeah,
Right.
30 something. Started out as a radio maintainer and ended up as general supervisor. Traveled all over the Pocahontas division. The people, I like the people. There's some good guys working on the radio. I like to be around.
So the relationships were important. Yeah.
Jerry Foster. I hired in at Portsmouth, Ohio in April of 1969 as operator in Leverman. That was tower operators. Worked from Portsmouth up to Columbus. There's 3 towers in Columbus. Worked the agency at Circleville, the agency at Chillicothe, and all 3 jobs at the agencies that involved clerks. And then in 1979, I went into the roadmaster's office in Portsmouth and worked as a clerk in the roadmaster's office. And in '84, there was a job in the division engineer's office, which was just through the doorway from the roadmaster's office, and which are now called track supervisors. But anyway, they had a job that was going to be advertised and moved to Roanoke. You move your seniority all to Roanoke. So I bid on that job and was awarded that and moved to Roanoke in January of '85. On a bill payment system. I call it the ODP, On Division Purchase Payment System. That they created sort of a centralized thing to pay the invoices for each division. They took a person off of each division.
Now you can't find 3.
So we had a house in Ohio that we put up for sale. I had 2 children and a wife, and couldn't sell the house. And so I went to Chief Engineer Janosco and I said, if you have any promotions available, I would love consideration. Told him the situation, and so within about 3 months, the Bluefield job came open, and in the division engineer's office, and so I was awarded that, not knowing 3 people had already turned it down because of the scope of the job. But anyway, I came to Bluefield in January of '86, and we've been here in this area ever since. Raised our family here. Kids, grandkids, great-grandkids now. So we're stuck in the mountains. I left in 2000 on a buyout.
So how many years of service was that for you?
32.
32.
I really liked the office in Bluefield after I got acclimated to that, 6:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. most days or late. But met a lot of wonderful people, and I had the opportunity to go out in the field a lot at inventory time, and so I met a lot of field personnel, and then attend safety meetings and all, and meet just great folks throughout the whole Pocahontas division.
Steve Duncan. I hired on the section gang in 1980 and then switched over to brakeman in 81. August of 80, I hired as a section, and then July of 81, brakeman. I got sick and actually got sick Christmas night of '94, and I had a staph infection in my right leg, and then July that year I found out I had a brain tumor, and went to UVA and had it taken out, and that's about my life story. Brakeman and then as a conductor.
Robert Anthony, hired on the railroad here in the old building in 1966. Hired as an agent operator, and about 3 or 4 years I became a train dispatcher, extra train dispatcher, and I worked here till I went to Elmore and worked 6 years after I was part-time for a year. Then I went to Bluefield. So I still work train dispatcher here extra. And I can't remember what I got. The regular job is train dispatcher. So guys that train, help sit in and train with them. And finally they did away with the New River Division and called it PD district. And so they moved everything out of here to Bluefield. And they became the Princeton Deepwater District. They wasn't just a PD district. But then I worked till 1989. 23 years. Worked here as a station agent, and I was extra. It was a good job. And then the operator's office was right here. But I had one of the best bosses in the world, Jack King. I can't tell anybody anything without mentioning Jack King. He was one of the best bosses I've ever had in my life. And he was a good Christian. So I think anybody that you talk to, he volunteered some in this new bar. It's a good life. Working with men, you know. Of course, I tried to be nice, kind for all of the guys, you know, and you want to treat them like you want to be treated, you know. So I've had a good life. God's blessed me. Well, we had an older guy here named Mason Meadows. And he had been on the railroad for a long time, but he was just a funny guy, you know. He'd tell old tales and stuff. He always would sing sometimes, you know, and I think they made him because the FFA rules. He would be singing, you know.
My name's Bob Belcher, hired April 1974 and retired April 2007. 34 years as a railroad engineer. I worked about 1 year as a brakeman in training and service, transferred to engine service, 1976. Worked mostly out of Bluefield, except when I couldn't hold Bluefield. Generally, I worked the pushers. I worked all of them over the years. And it was a hard job, very time consuming, kept me away from the family a lot. I enjoyed the job and the faithful income, but I was glad to get away. The people I worked with and the job was challenging and demanding and a lot of responsibilities, but all in all, it was glad to quit. Well, probably your dad. Your dad and I hired out, well, I hired a little bit ahead of him, and really he was like his first pay trip. He and his father, we had to took a run together to Northern Virginia. And to this day, we're close friends and stay in touch, and probably my best friend on the railroad. And of course I have a lot of them I saw today that I see maybe once a year, maybe not then. But yeah, that's one of my first memories is of your dad and his dad. A lot of the old guys like that when you meet, they make a big impression when you're out there because it's a different world out there than it is about any job you'll ever do.
Any regrets?
No, I would do it again.
My name is Calvin Baldwin. I retired in 1990 and I hired in 86. Started out as a brakeman. 18 months later, I went to engine school and became an engineer. Bluefield, Weller, Dismal, Richland, Smallville, Norton, Williamson, Elmore, Portsmouth. Butch Copeland, he was a fine engineer, he passed away. His son Scott still works on the railroad. There's really too many of them to mention. It's like a club. And the railroad treated us different back then, you know. They took care of us. I really loved being an engineer. I loved my job. I had a hard time retiring at first, trying to figure out what to do with myself. You know, I was on call so many years, almost 35.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Okay, my name's Randy Biggs, and I hired on the railroad in 1970, May of 1970, hired on as an operator. And I did just a little bit everything on the radio, or railroad. I was an operator, a clerk, and finally I became a dispatcher. And worked a dispatcher job for 25 years and retired in 2011. I had a total of 41 years and 5 months. I worked most all the Pokey division. I worked the Clinch Valley District, Bluefield and Norton. Worked Pokey division, but the Pokey side, which was Bluefield to Williamson. And in about the last 12 years, I worked what we called the PD district, or PD district and Buchanan branch. So I worked just about all of it. You work with so many different people. A lot of good guys work on the railroad. And, it's a big family out there. And I just, like you work all day on the railroad and you just kind of look back and see what you've done. It makes you feel proud. It makes you feel good. One thing about the railroad, most everyone helps each other, you know. And I've just had, I couldn't begin to count the number of people that have really helped me and taught me so much. I couldn't pinpoint one person. Everyone's just very good to me.